Welcome to the Darkstream, VoxDay, voxday.net, and unauthorized.tv. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the recent episode with Owen. We're going to be doing that regularly. Like I said, I'm going to try to be streaming 4 times a week. I think the schedule might move around a little bit, but it's going to be anchored with Mondays with Owen, Thursdays with JDA for Archaven Nights, usually Wednesdays, and probably Saturdays, but we'll see. So anyhow, but I am committed to streaming more often. We've got the new payment system set up. The objective, of course, is to, hey, I got a princess coming to visit. The objective, of course, is to build up unauthorized subscribers again for the 3rd time. So if you haven't already gotten yourself set up with that system, I would definitely encourage you to do so if you're in the USA. If you're not, for the Europeans, we will come up with another solution, probably credit card based, and we'll of course have that option available for US folks as well. But we really encourage everybody to get on the new system. It's more secure, it's more stable, reliable, and it's much less likely to get interrupted. So anyhow, enough of that pitch. It's been an interesting week. We've been really active on Sigma Game, and I think thanks to some of the commenters, we've actually broken some new conceptual ground in that area, which I think is not just interesting, but highly useful. It really opened my eyes when a woman who is a pretty reliable commenter there. She always has something reasonable to say. And while some of the other women, including Dr. Rachel Brown, were still kind of wrestling with the concept that they don't have empathy, which is kind of funny because it, to a certain extent, illustrates the point. When someone is saying, why would you say something that is true if it makes me feel uncomfortable? I first of all don't think that that's a difficult question to answer. And secondly, the mere articulation of it is, to a certain extent, demonstrative of the concept, right? You can't genuinely imagine why someone would say something that is true because it, and of course there's, some of the little rhetorical slings and arrows that you see anytime you dare not coddle women. And, as I've repeatedly pointed out, I don't care. I don't care how it makes me feel. I don't care how it makes you feel. I don't care how it makes anybody feel, because what we are attempting to do at Sigma Game is to develop these intellectual concepts that are observed to have real existence and a real effect on the material world. And so why would you talk about it? Because it's there, because it's observable. because you can see it. And so that's one of the problems with finishing the book is we keep coming up with this stuff, you know. Skydog says, if that was the only paid article this year, it would still be worth it. 10 out of 10 article. What he's talking about there is actually let's actually go there and take a look at it. I think that's probably a useful thing to do, just because I think Julie's perspective is so useful. It's called "Women Can't Handle the Emotional Truth: Why the Absence of Female Empathy is a Very Good Thing." And this was confusing to some people and offensive to some people because women have a tendency to believe they're the more empathetic sex. Now, this is mostly the result of people confusing sympathy and empathy. And so, now women are the more sensitive sex. There's no question about that. But sensitivity, you know, having your own feelings be sensitive says absolutely nothing about your ability to understand the feelings and perspectives of another. So what Julie wrote was, it's interesting how often a characteristic which is only expressed at the far right of the bell curve is labeled by most people as a moral and aspirational good, and that anything less than that is therefore somehow a lack in dignity, virtue, or value as a human being. The vast majority of people are not empathetic, incredibly physically attractive, vastly intelligent, wildly successful, or even any combination of the preceding. However, the vast majority of people also seem to have a need to believe that they are at least one of those things in order to be worthy as human beings, which is true. You know, Garrison Keillor used to write about Lake Wobegon, the town where everyone's children are above average. Most people believe that they are above average, which of course is statistically impossible. And, you know, it's customary for people to both believe that they are above average and also that they are the norm, which when you think about it is contradictory. You know, it's a contradiction in terms. You cannot be above average and the norm. But there's nothing wrong with being closer to the middle. Virtually everyone is. That's why they call it a bell curve. The middle is where the most people are, which is why we have a concept of normal. It is normal for both men and women to lack empathy, more so for women than men. Ironically, it's also normal for most men and women to believe themselves empathetic, and so it goes. Yeah, I mean, that was one thing where I got into it a bit with Dr. Rachel Fencing Bear, because she'd reacted to what I said and was somehow under the impression that I thought that all men were empathetic and all women are not empathetic. And I said, no, less than 80%, or, you know, less than 20% of the population has empathy. In fact, less than 20% of the male population has empathy. That means less than 10% of the population has empathy. You know, 80% of men, 100% of women. They don't have it. It's observable. And so now this is the key part, and I added the emphasis myself. Considering how normal women behave, it's probably a very good thing that they do lack empathy. Imagine, gentlemen, if she could understand the inner workings of your mind and recognize that you are so very different, in what ways, and how best that can be used to control the relationship. Combine that with her default level of virtue and self-control, or lack thereof, and suddenly the thought of her being genuinely empathetic sounds a tad less appealing. You know, this is very important because it's why men lamenting their wife's lack of empathy are really missing the point. Women do not have the same emotional breaks that men do. Women are more emotionally chaotic, more emotionally unstable. And just as the man has to exercise his self-control with his superior physical strength, if a woman gets mad and beats on her husband's chest or, slaps him or something, it's not that big a deal. Men have to be socialized and trained not to do that. In the same way, men have a greater ability to control their desire to emotionally harm the other individual. A lot of what, we all know that a lot of what women do with their superior verbal skills is they use them to attempt to harm their husbands, their boyfriends, etc., etc. They sling around the rhetoric with the intent of doing emotional harm. Now, the reason that it's not so bad is because they lack empathy. They don't know what the triggers are. If you're a man who's ever had a girlfriend or been married or that sort of thing, you can probably remember an incident or two when your girlfriend or your wife lost her temper and said something that was clearly intended to try to trigger you emotionally, but it was so completely off base that it not only didn't upset you, but it was actually hard not to laugh. You knew what they were doing. Well, that's what happens when somebody who lacks empathy attempts to push your buttons. It just doesn't work. I will say that the worst attempt I ever had with someone trying to push my buttons, it was a man, not a woman. It was actually the producer of Rebels Run. There's still no proof that he was definitely involved in the scam, but I strongly suspect he was. And I counted, and he used 13 different rhetorical approaches to try to emotionally trigger me. Anyhow, we're getting off track, so let's go back. Conversely, ladies, if you were really empathetic to your men, how likely would you be to get the ick pretty much immediately? This is vital too. I hadn't even thought about this. This is a brilliant observation. He's not just a stronger, hornier woman. He's a different creature altogether. Do you really want to know what he thinks? Really? Ask him to explain in detail about his favorite hobby and see how long it takes for you to completely lose interest. That's an amazing and very relevant point, and I think that it's something that's really important for women to keep in mind when they're potentially getting annoyed about the idea that they lack empathy. Is, women already have a fundamental problem with getting turned off by excessive familiarity with their husbands. It's so common that it's almost a cliche for a woman to, hit middle age, stop being attracted to her husband, and decide that she wants to go off on the live, life, love, eat, pray, whatever it is, to go off on the journey to find herself, etc., etc. All it is boredom. Well, I shouldn't say it's all it is. All it is boredom and familiarity, leading her to lose interest. And it's very common, and maybe that's one reason why men have midlife crises, is to make them more exciting and interesting potentially to their wives again. I don't know. I do think it's interesting that the midlife crisis for both men and women tends to almost be related in the woman thinks the man is too boring, so she's no longer attracted, and the man feels mortality approaching, so he needs to go out and do something exciting. You can see where those things could actually complement each other, although obviously in practice we tend to think of them in terms of both being destructive to the relationship, which is probably true. I don't know. I think it's interesting that there's a bit of a complementary structure to that. But the point is that if excessive familiarity with a man causes a woman to be less attracted to him, then obviously empathy would be a real problem. It would be very destructive to relationships. You know, women always say, I want to be surprised. I want a bit of a mystery. Well, what eliminates the mystery faster than really having an accurate read on how somebody feels, what their perspective is, and what they think? And so I personally think that it is a blessing to both men and women that women lack empathy, because I think that an empathetic woman is likely to be extremely destructive to her relationships with men and women alike. And so, and I think that is something, as I pointed out in the Sigma Game post, that's something that should comfort those men who are sad that they can't cry, and they can't cry on their wife's shoulder, and they can't tell her how sad and scared they are, and they can't use her as an ersatz mommy. They have to continue to be the rock, provide the emotional support and stability in the relationship. That's a lot, that burden, and it is a burden. It can be a difficult and lonely burden for men. But isn't that a lot better than giving an individual who occasionally goes into uncontrolled rages the keys to your psyche? I mean, think about the absolutely worst temper tantrum or hissy fit or fight that you've ever had with a woman. Just take a moment and picture it. Remember the craziest, most insulting, offensive things that were said. Remember the craziest things that were done. And now imagine that person in that mood actually had the keys that would unlock your psyche and do emotional harm to you. Can you imagine how immensely destructive that would be? Can you imagine how few relationships would survive even one fight? Quiet Thought Spare says he's having some Nam flashbacks. Yeah, I mean, I've seen some crazy things, practically based on things my friends have told me over the years. Most of my friends have seen some crazy things. And so it's really not it's the whole idea. What's great about this is it completely flips our perspective about empathy on its head. Instead of men sitting there thinking, oh gee, it's just not fair that she gets to cry on my shoulder and I don't get to cry on hers. It's so awful that, like there's that, somebody put up on Social Galactic that video about the guy who is obviously feeling his mortality. He's sitting there and he's holding this nearly empty spool of wire in his hands. And his wife is like, what's going on? What's wrong? And he's like, yeah, I've had this for 40 years and it's nearly gone. 40 years of my life. And it's obvious. I mean, you don't need any actual empathy to understand that this man sees the nearly empty spool of wire as a metaphor for his life. The sand is running out. Time is running out. He doesn't have that many projects left in him. There's only so much wire for his projects. He's only got so much time for his projects. And we all get to that point. I got to that point maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago when I realized I was thinking more about legacy, things that I could do for my kids, for my grandkids, for the community. I was thinking about those things way more than I was thinking about my own success, anything that I wanted. I mean, I'm at the point now where all I really care about is, for myself, is staying in good enough physical condition to keep playing soccer. I don't need a fancy car. I don't need a bigger house. I don't need any fame. I don't need a best-selling book. I mean, I'm doing certain things because I have to do something, and because, I mean, there are things that I want to do. There are things that I want to accomplish, but it's not the same. The desire is not the same, because I know, you're on the far side of the hill now, and so, you spend a lot more time thinking about how can I help other people, how can I set up other people, and so, when you look at this guy, he's looking at that going, I don't have that much time left. My life is just like this wire. And his wife is like, well, okay, sorry you feel that way, but why are you wearing your Jets cap? I'm a little concerned you're wearing your Jets cap. I mean, and he's just like, just go away. And people were very harsh about the wife. I mean, because obviously she had no empathy and no sympathy at all. Nothing. But, imagine if she did. Imagine if she did have empathy and she really did understand how vulnerable he was emotionally at that moment. And then imagine she was mad at him because he didn't take the garbage out, or he didn't mow the lawn. And so instead of just being unsympathetic, she actually chooses to take those emotional wounds and start digging into them and operating on them like a surgeon and making them worse. So even though it might strike us as a little bit appalling, and maybe it strikes women that way too, I don't know. But even though it strikes us as men as appalling that this guy's wife would be so completely unsympathetic towards him, we can also understand that it's a really good thing that she's not empathetic and that she does not have the ability to understand his emotional needs, his emotional perspective, or his thoughts and feelings, because of the very good possibility that she would use that against him. Draco. Crazy plus solipsism plus root access equals no. That's a really good point, you know. And so, and like I said, then for the women, you know, it's a blessing too, because if they were empathetic, and with us being fairly simple creatures, it's just they would be sick of us within 5 years. Skydive says, if my wife had empathy, she would have spiraled uncontrollably when her dog got sick and died. It could be. And Dark Lord fan says, be careful what you wish for. Chris Hawk says, one thing that I might need is a small but respectable vineyard. Actually, I actually just created this for my Instagram account. Let's see if I can remember where I put it. I'm going to put this up in the next day or two. I think you'll all understand and appreciate that the long national nightmare is over. The crisis has been averted, and there's nothing to fear. We are prepared. Yes, this is true. Yesterday, I restocked the wine cellar. The wine cellar has been restocked. Please feel free to proceed with the next apocalypse. So I got a little worried the other day. My wife commented that we were down literally to the last 2 rows. And so we made a trip to what I call the wine store. Apparently they sell a lot of other things there too. But I don't really buy much else there when I go. And so, the funny thing is they have often on weekends, and especially towards the holidays, they often have a person there pushing the various wines that they're selling. And when Farley's in town, we always go together and pick up the stuff for the holidays. And Space Bunny's always like, how could you take that long? All you had to do was go to the store and pick up some wine. And I'm like, well, we have to try the wines. I mean, they've got the samples there. She's like, you guys always buy the same stuff. I'm like, well, yeah, but it's not polite to just walk past these people. I mean, there they are, working hard to try to sell wine. So we try the wine, and if we like it, we'll pick up a box of that in addition to the extra stuff. And if it happens to take an hour or so, it's just what it takes, right? Anyhow, we're good. It's completely full. The one thing, Space Bunny was laughing at me yesterday because she's like, she checked it out and she's like, is this good? Are you happy now? And I said, I love seeing the shelves all full with all the bottles. And so I hate taking that first one off the shelf. Because now you no longer have a completely full wine cellar, right? So I always buy an extra box or 3 so that are like on the floor, so that I can like take them out of there and not disturb the beautiful full shelves. So anyhow, yeah, the inventory was definitely updated though. I did note, I still tend to think in terms of the Grand Reserva from 2009, but we kind of gradually over time it gets moved out and replaced. And so what I did end up picking up a lot of cartons of was the Reserva 2018. I mean, it's just a Tempranillo, so it doesn't need more than 2 years of aging. Although I have to admit, they're saying, oh well, the 2009s are going to be bordering on undrinkable soon, and that's just not true. I mean, I had one about 3 months ago, and it was just like pure velvet going down. So anyhow, we are ready, come what may. War in Pakistan, carriers sinking in the Red Sea, all of it, we're good, we're ready. So anyhow, that's about all I wanted to discuss for tonight. Like I said, my goal is to stream more often, but not quite as long, so that I don't run out of steam, and I don't just start rambling on about nothing in particular. I will comment that I actually put up. I noticed this and wanted to show that. Yesterday, Donald Trump said that the Houthis had capitulated and that they didn't want to fight. And I was a little dubious about that myself. So I thought it was even more interesting that this image was put up, and I can't actually read it at that. But basically, the Yemen came out and said, yeah, we are not capitulating to anyone. We actually caused another jet to fall off a carrier, and so I don't know what that means. Terrence says, any news on the next crowdfund? Yeah, the next one is going to be, well, there's a small one that's coming up with an author that we're supporting very soon. It's a children's book, and then we'll do the Black Warrant one, but I don't want to do Black Warrant until we get the Hypergamos book shipped. And I am pleased to be able to say and show you that the Hypergamos books have been shipped out to the States. They're on their way to the warehouse. And once they get there, then we will be shipping them out to everybody. So this does not include the leather books. This does not include the coffee table books. It does include everything else, all the variants, etc., etc. Let's see. I got a little bit of time for some questions, if you guys want to ask some questions. How's the bindery coming along? Actually, that's something I can show you. In fact, I sent this picture to the leather supplier today, but there's no reason not to show it to you. We started working, we got the test pigskin in, and we started working with it. And where did I put it? There it is. So this is what you're seeing here on the left is the current cowhide that we've been using on all of our books. And what you're seeing on the right is the same book bound in pigskin. And I think, I even have it here. So I took these pictures to show the supplier. So this is the, you can see it better in the picture. This is the book, and then this is the pigskin, same meditations. Color's not great for the stream camera, but the pigskin, what's very obvious when you see it is that the grain, the fake grain, which is basically a stamped pattern on the cowhide, it is obviously designed to imitate the pigskin. And I will also say that when you feel it, the pigskin just feels better. I mean, it's not, it doesn't feel quite as hard. If you're going to bet on one to survive getting gouged with a knife, you'd probably bet on the cowhide. But the pigskin is tough. I mean, it's not like it's not like the goat skin. It's not buttery and soft, but it does have a pleasing texture to it. And we're actually going to work with them. I've talked to the provider, and we're going to work with them and see if they might be able to offer some special finishing that would make it even more similar to the patina of the Franklin Library pigskins. So it's also interesting that because it's thinner, it doesn't require the same amount of skiving that the cowhide does. So anyhow, but it's a, I'll take the picture off here. It's a good looking book. It's just got a really pleasing texture to it. The bookbinder says it's easier to work with. There's definitely a few tricks and stuff to get used to and accustomed to, but overall, it's working really well. So the first pigskin book will probably be, okay, Swiss Family Robinson is not, A Sea of Skulls is not, Losing Military Strategy and Beowulf are not. So probably Jane Eyre. I need to, here, let me check. Or possibly one of the histories, although we may stick with the cowhide for that, the fancy cowhide for that. Let me see here. Okay, War and Peace, Dracula. Dracula's not. Freedom of Thought might be the first one. Freedom of Thought, and then Jane Eyre, and then Icelandic Edda, Quo Vadis, Metaphysics. I mean, we have a lot of books to get done. We're very, very far behind, and we know it. But it's going to be worth it. And so it's definitely going to be worth it. So be confident in that. Will Trump deport legal foreigners next? They will eventually be deported, whether it's within the current Trump term yet, I don't know. I don't think that'll be like the immediate next step. When's the next Stupid Question Day? Yeah, we should do that soon. Barring any major news events, probably the next solo stream. And we'll go longer for that one. I won't cut that short. Taryn says those pigskins look good. They do, and they really feel good too. That's what's encouraging. I mean, they feel more like a Franklin Library book than an Easton Press book, and that is what we're shooting for. And then anyhow, that's all I've got for tonight. So thanks for tuning in. I will get today and tomorrow. I will get the older ones uploaded. I need to do that. Vox, what's your all-time 11 in football? I am not going to answer that off the top of my head because I'm going to have to think about that one. Although it might amuse you to know that the Pizza Maestro, who is a massive Inter fan, basically spent all day blowing up my phone with various memes that involve things like a big blue and black serpent sinking a boat. All these references. If you haven't had the chance to see the highlights to last night's Inter Barca game, just watch it. Even if you're not into soccer, trust me, it's that good. I'm Vox Day, and this is the Darkstream.